When it comes to delivering flowers for life's special occasions, trust the name that's been setting the standard for nearly 50 years. 1-800-Flowers.com. From breathtaking bouquets to one-of-a-kind arrangements, 1-800-Flowers is your authority on quality blooms. Always fresh, always stunning, always delivered with care. And right now, for a limited time, you can save up to 40% off your bouquet and make someone's day. Save up to 40% off today at 1-800-Flowers.com/WWO. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/WWO.
Life doesn't pause when you're sick. Vaccines against respiratory illnesses can help protect you and give you more playtime with your best friend. Depending on age and health status, vaccinations for flu, COVID-19, RSV, or pneumococcal infection may be recommended. Vaccines can help keep you from having a rough time. Learn more at cveep.org/vaccines-protect. Brought to you by the American Lung Association and CVEEP, fighting infectious respiratory disease.
Never in my lifetime have I seen anything like what we're seeing right now. Drugs still under patent. Drugs that the medical world is beginning to honestly look as a longevity therapy. That's what we're going to get into a little bit later on today. But this is a drug backed by study after study showing that it lowers mortality, it dampens inflammation, it restores metabolic pathways. It may genuinely expand the length of your life, human life. And right as all this science is snowballing and it's coming down the hill at us like a freight train, these drugs are getting cheaper, not more expensive. That's nothing like that has ever happened in my lifetime. Now, the prices today aren't low enough to solve the burden. It's not low enough to make a huge impact on somebody, staring at a huge grocery bill and a mortgage and what are they going to cut back on? But it's movement in the right direction. And when you couple that with all the news that we have about these drugs hitting Medicare and Medicaid in the coming months, this is massive. It's objectively massive. I've never seen anything like it. And everything that we're going to talk to you about today on the podcast is actually going to point in that same direction. The acquisitions, the survival research, the side effect breakthroughs that are coming, the price changes, all of this is telling the same story. And that's a story of hope for the people who have been left out, hope for people who have been pining for more affordable, more accessible obesity treatments. And we're going to get into it all on today's podcast.
Welcome to the On the Pen podcast with your host, Dave Knapp.
Tons of news to get into. It seems like every single week we get into just a treasure trove of information. It empowers patients to have more competent and confident conversations with their doctors. And last week, there was so much to cover in terms of what was happening with the price of prescription drugs broadly, what was happening with Medicare, Medicaid, and then this big tussle, this tug of war that Novo Nordisk was having with Pfizer over Metsera. And while this big struggle was taking place between Pfizer and Metsera, AstraZeneca quietly made a move that I think we should be paying attention to, because they made an acquisition of Six Peaks Bio, which is a Switzerland-based startup that's focused on fat loss and muscle preservation, which is a top priority for people like you and me on a GLP-1. We know that with any kind of rapid weight loss, the name of the game is the quality of weight loss. It's not just the movement on the scale, it's the quality of the weight loss. And we're seeing this acquisition for $170 million with some additional payments up to $130 million. Obviously nowhere near close to the size of the Metsera deal, but I think something that really is a bellwether of where obesity medicine is going in the next 10 years, because I honestly believe that within the next few years, we're not going to be having conversations about if there's a drug that can help people to achieve a healthier BMI, a healthier metabolic state. It's going to be which one, and how do we make sure that as the weight goes down, the quality of that weight loss is a good thing for patients, especially older patients where muscle mass and the preservation of muscle mass is so important to longevity. So that's what makes the Six Peaks deal huge, because they have a leading drug that blocks activin receptors. This is the same pathway that Eli Lilly's acquisition of bimagrumab works on. They're testing bimagrumab with tirzepatide to improve the quality of weight loss, preserve muscle mass. So this is AstraZeneca's move in that same direction. And the trials for this particular molecule are imminent. And so we're not talking about, something that's way off in the distance here. We're talking about the potential for AstraZeneca to have a really meaningful candidate here for both fat loss and muscle preservation. And they plan to combine these with potential mechanisms like GLP-1. So this is a really interesting move because, as you may or may not be aware, these types of drugs actually target specifically insulin resistance and visceral fat. And so this is about quality of weight loss. And that's where this whole ship is sailing to, just better quality of weight loss. And how do we mitigate side effects? And we're going to get into some of that a little bit later on as we move through today's podcast. But AstraZeneca getting into the game. So you see a lot of really potential big candidates jumping in to this race in meaningful ways. You've got AstraZeneca, Amgen, we've got Innovent and Boehringer Ingelheim, which we should be getting some phase 3 data on soon on survodutide. And of course, Pfizer's acquisition of Metsera, which can't be understated. So a lot of really positive things happening when we talk about breaking up the monopoly and helping to continue to push these costs of these medications in the right direction. Welcome to the On the Pen podcast. If you're new here, my name is Dave Knapp. I run On the Pen. We bring you obesity medicine news from the patient perspective each and every week to empower you to have more competent and confident conversations with your doctor. So if you're new here, if you ever want to get obesity medicine news, you're either going to get news that was intended for doctors or you're going to get news that was intended for investors. And most of us are neither. We're just people trying to live for longer, right? And so how do we parlay the information and news that's out there into better health? We do that by listening to the On the Pen podcast. So first of all, subscribe, give the podcast a 5-star rating and review, and train the algorithm to really know that this information is beneficial. And then the other ask of you that I would have is to just support our sponsors, because the headline of this sponsor is a company called Shed. So if you're interested in obesity treatment, but also wraparound treatment like coaching, not just access to medication, but coaching, side effect, hand-holding, right? A community of people that are also on these medications. You got to check out Shed. Go to tryshed.com. You can use code OTP25. You're going to save 25%. They're the headline sponsor of this podcast, and we couldn't do this without them. So hit all the buttons, but check out some of our sponsors, and Shed is the chief among them. So thank you to Shed for bringing us the podcast each and every week. Now, check this out. One of the biggest side effects that we talk about with GLP-1s, and let me know in the comments what the biggest side effects that you've dealt with. But I got to say that the number one most reported side effect from the clinical trials and from our OTP community is nausea. It's nausea. It's that feeling of nausea and not being able to shake that nausea. That's why so often these medications, when they're prescribed with something like Zofran, because they know, they know that a good number of people are going to deal with those side effects. Now, in comes a new drug candidate. It's got a little bit of a backstory to it, but this is a drug from a company called Vanda, and tradipitant, that's a mouthful, but tradipitant showed in a recent clinical trial that it cut vomiting rates in new GLP-1 starters from 59% down to 29%, a 50% reduction in vomiting rates. Now, when you looked at vomiting rates plus significant nausea, that dropped from 48% down to 22%. So these were GLP-1 naive patients. They were just starting Wegovy. And so they had never been on a GLP-1 before. And so the really important thing to understand about this group of people is it's the people who are the most likely to drop the therapy after experiencing the side effects, right? I know for those of us in the OTP community, whether you're listening to the podcast or you're watching on TikTok, wherever you're watching and wherever you're getting this information, I know it's hard for you immersed in this community to ever imagine going off this medication. I just think that universally that's kind of the experience. Like you're going to pry this drug from my cold dead hands. But the interesting thing is when you zoom out and you look at the millions of people who don't share their journey online, who aren't coming online to find information, a lot of those people are starting these therapies and quitting immediately because they can't deal with the side effects. So Vanda comes along and they may be able to improve adherence to GLP-1 when people are first starting out, first really experiencing those side effects by taking this twice daily for 1 week before they start, and then 1 week after they start the Wegovy shot. So the interesting thing about this drug is it's not new. This is a phase 3 trial and was actually rejected by the FDA in 2024 for gastroparesis. I haven't really done a huge dig into why that was, but perhaps they're seeing a recycled purpose for this drug based upon what they saw in some of those early clinical trials that may improve people staying on the medication. Now, we talked about how most of us in this community can't imagine not being on this medication. And when we have these conversations about cost and accessibility, we can't have these conversations without talking about our sponsors, Claimable, because Claimable, if you've ever lost access to your coverage through your insurance and they've denied your claim, they count on you not fighting, because most of us don't even know where to begin when it comes to fighting an insurance denial. That's where Claimable takes their tool and makes it super easy for you to develop a medical case and a legal case, and then fire your appeal off to all the interested parties that can actually help make something happen in terms of retaining access or getting access back to your branded medication. So staying on this medication can be hard because of side effects, but it can also be hard to stay on because of insurance. And Claimable gives you the tools to help fight back. You can check them out at getclaimable.com/OTP and use code OTP10 to save 10%. I love Claimable. I hear from people every day who are really, really, really seeing a lot of success using the Claimable tool. But yeah, if you've experienced a side effect, I know a lot of people are saying Zofran works really well for them in terms of their side effects, but nausea, bloating, ringing of the ears, somebody said, is a weird side effect that they get on these medications. I think one of the weirder ones that I hear from actually a lot of people is that they wake up at like 3 a.m. and can't go back to sleep, and they feel like they've slept a whole night and don't need to go back to sleep. Some of them even go to the gym. I think that's experienced by a lot more people than you would think, and is one of those weird side effects that we hear a lot about at OnThePen. Now, on the conversation of the cost of these medications, we dropped a news article, a TikTok, a short video here on YouTube this past weekend, because we had heard from some insiders with Costco that Novo Nordisk was dropping the price of Wegovy for Costco. Well, actually, this ended up being true, and it ended up being actually true beyond just Costco. So NovoCare, after their most favored nations announcement, where they will be offering Wegovy through Medicare for $50 starting April 1st, and that they would be bringing down the cost of their cash pay options for those paying cash. This is the first real look that we've had at what the pricing is going to be, and they've made it live today. So if you're on Wegovy or looking to switch to Wegovy and you're a cash pay, you're going to be able to get Wegovy, the starting 2 doses, for $199 a month. Now, that's significantly cheaper than what you've been able to get it for. As you move up in doses, it's going to go to $350. So $350 seems to be the new price for Wegovy, which is interesting because the therapeutic doses of Zepbound are going to be right at that $450 number. So they're going to come in $100 cheaper. Now, they've said they've done this to get people off of compounds, to get them on the safe FDA-approved version. Now, I think that's highly ridiculous. Nobody who is relying on compounds is going to look at $350 for semaglutide as a good price, unless getting the FDA-approved branded medication matters a great deal to those people, which I think the millions of people that have voted with their pocketbooks have said, we'll take the non-branded all day. This is more about the tremendous amount of market share that Novo Nordisk has lost to Eli Lilly from Zepbound. Zepbound has proven to be superior in terms of its weight loss efficacy, in terms of its side effect profile. People just tend to do better on Zepbound. And so Wegovy has lost a ton of market share. This is all about recapturing that. Do I think it will? No, I don't. I think Novo's going to have to. This $199 starting dose that they've been tooling. This is the second time that they've done it. They've been playing around with this for a while. They're going to have to bring that around to stay, and they're going to have to bring that around for all the doses. Now, interestingly, And this is something we kind of talked about. Back when the Most Favored Nations announcement was made 2 weeks ago, most of the reporting around that said that Lilly and Novo got a priority review voucher for their oral tablets, their oral obesity medications. While that's true for Novo, Eli Lilly and orforglipron, it's actually not true for Novo Nordisk. What they did receive a priority review voucher, but they received it for the 7.2 milligram dose of Wegovy. And that's where things get kind of interesting in this conversation, because 7.2 milligrams of Wegovy gets awfully close to weight loss efficacy of tirzepatide. It gets to 20%. Tirzepatide is about 22%. So how will Novo Nordisk price the 7.2 milligram dose of Wegovy when it comes out? Because it will be coming out within the next couple of months. It should be approved. I would say within the next 6 months, you'll have 7.2 milligram, up to 7.2 milligrams of Wegovy available. Now, will they bring that to market cheaper than Zepbound? That could start a real price war, because if you're looking at Zepbound and you're going, well, I want to get maximum weight loss, but you could get it for $100 cheaper per month by going to Wegovy, that may be compelling to get people to claw back, or to get Novo to claw back some of their market share from Lilly. And this could really set off what I think could actually be a legitimate price war, because it's these two in these specific doses, 7.2 milligrams of Wegovy versus 15 milligrams of Zepbound. Those are pretty close in efficacy. They are pretty close in efficacy. And when you kind of couple the fact that it seems like the GLP-1 molecule, specifically of which semaglutide is about as close as it gets to our endogenous GLP-1, seems to have some cardiac protective benefits outside of weight loss, seems to have some neurological protective benefits outside of weight loss and outside of dosing that we have yet to see with tirzepatide. And I don't know that you can extrapolate out that you will definitely see that with tirzepatide, because even in the heart failure with preserved ejection fraction data that we saw comparing tirzepatide to dulaglutide, Zepbound Mounjaro to Trulicity, which is Lilly's own older GLP-1, you did not see tirzepatide really meaningfully differentiate itself in the reduction of all-cause or mortality associated with heart failure with preserved ejection fraction. So I don't know that you can definitely extrapolate that out for tirzepatide, because tirzepatide is primarily a GIP medication. It has a GLP-1 kicker, I call it, a GIP medication with a GLP-1 kicker. So very little GLP-1. And it seems like these mechanisms have different profound effects on the body. It may be that we learn down the line that GIP does something spectacular too for something else in the body, perhaps when it comes to liver fat, in fact, in metabolic health, when it comes to liver disease. But for now, we don't have that data. And so there are some compelling arguments to be made on the Novo Nordisk side from the patient side, that if that 7.2 comes out and if they price it at that $350, is it a better deal than, say, 15 milligrams of tirzepatide at $450? I don't know, but these are the conversations that we're going to be talking through here at OnThePen, and conversations that you should definitely be having with your doctor, because I think this is amazing news. So the bottom line is Wegovy, $199 for the first 2 starting doses. If you're a new patient to Wegovy, $350 for all the doses after that. Now, the interesting thing is they did not lower the price from Ozempic, the $499 for the 2 milligram. It's going to be $350 for the previous doses. Now, the thing that Ozempic has that Wegovy does not is as an adjustable dose pen. And so the reason they didn't lower that 8 milligram pen is because at $499, if you're on 0.25 of Wegovy, a doctor could theoretically prescribe the 8 milligram Ozempic pen. It's going to last you several months. So that may be the cheaper route if you and your doctor decide that that is a route that you want to explore. I'm not a medical doctor. I am not giving medical advice. I am just empowering you with information to help you have more competent and confident conversations with your doctor. And if this podcast is doing it, please take a moment and give it a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you're listening. And if you're on YouTube, please hit the thumbs up button and make sure that you subscribe to our channels, because all of those things train the algorithm that this is helpful information. And I do believe that all the work and effort that we put into this makes it super helpful for patients. And I do believe that some of the information that we have given out here is really helping people to live better, richer, fuller, healthier lives. And so thank you for being here. Thank you for being the best part of what we do at OnThePen. And thank you for bearing with me as I do those little shameless self plugs. Let's talk about this too, because one of the biggest things that we led with is how the cost of these medications going down is an objective miracle. It's a miracle. No, there are no other examples that I can think of in my lifetime where drugs had such a profound effect on the health of millions of people. And while they were still under patent, the cost of them was significantly lowered instead of significantly increased, right? I'm used to seeing the cost of drugs go up. In my experience with the health system, I'm not used to seeing them go down. And even after they become generic, it takes a good long while for the cost to come down meaningfully. We've been paying $4,500 a month for a drug called Enbrel for my wife for 20 years. 20 years. So when we have a drug come out like this that reduces diabetes effects, reduces the effects of obesity, reduces the effect of mild to moderate sleep apnea, obstructive sleep apnea, reduces major cardiovascular events by 20%, causes 94% of pre-diabetics to not become diabetic. We have all these cascading avalanche of data that we get from these medications. And to have the cost of inaccessibility, cost going down and accessibility expanding is a absolute massive deal. It just is. And Medicare alone, expanding the access to 40 million people starting in May for $50 copay is insane. It's just insane. And it's something that people like me have fought very hard for. So when I hear people, on TikTok saying, this isn't a big deal for me, I think, first of all, zoom out and think of somebody other than yourself for like maybe 2 seconds. I realize that's hard for most people that live on TikTok as influencers or influencers in general. Just to zoom out, let's think about other people for like maybe 2 seconds. 40 million people getting access to this drug for $50 or for free, which will be the case for many people on Medicaid, some of the most vulnerable people in our population. It's an objective miracle. It just is. It is. And the interesting thing, I'm going to opine for a little bit. The interesting thing here is this isn't because of Trump, and you're not buying the drugs through Trump. Trump RX is just a price list. This actually only happened because the Biden administration did something that the Trump administration could build off of. And accidentally, for once in my lifetime, we talk about a lot of once in my lifetimes. For once in my lifetime, the Democrats did something and the Republicans built on it, and it did something positive for patients, because this whole idea of most favored nations was actually floated at the end of the first Trump administration, but the court said, no, you can't do it. I said, you can't do it because there's no law to work this within. Well, it was the Democrat administration and the Biden administration that passed something called the Inflation Reduction Act, and baked within the Inflation Reduction Act was a mechanism for the federal government to negotiate the prices of certain drugs for Medicare. So it gave a framework of law within which an executive order could work. So most favored nations never happens without the Inflation Reduction Act. At the end of the Biden administration, and so when we talk about at the end of the Biden administration, that's a mouthful, essentially what happened was these drugs were going to be allowed. There was a rule change that was going to allow these drugs to be added back to Medicare. But the Trump administration pulled that at the beginning of the year. And I think we all went, why? But the more I gave that thought, the more I thought, if we're going to open up Medicare and Medicaid to Lilly and Novo, who will make billions of dollars from that alone, billions and billions of dollars, we ought to use that as leverage to get them to lower the price. They really want into Medicare and Medicaid. We shouldn't give it away. So really what the Trump administration said is they said, why don't you come to the table? Let's have a little chitty chat, have a little chit chat about the cost of these medications before we just open up Medicare. And that's what happened. So the two administrations work together. Ultimately, at the end of the day, 30 to 40 million people are going to get better access to medications. And we did get news in the White House press briefing a couple weeks ago that the cost of the cash pay, which is what we're talking about here, is going to go down to $250 over the next 2 years for Zepbound and Wegovy. That's all tremendous news. So I realize that was a bit tangential. So I apologize for that, but it's huge. It's absolutely huge news that the government did something that's actually helping millions and millions of people, and especially the most vulnerable in our population. But let's talk about not politics, because I know that irritates people. But you can't talk about what's going on without talking about it. It's the reason that we have this news to begin with. So on the topic of why this is all a miracle, because there is this avalanche of good data. There is this avalanche of cascade of information about GLP-1s that are showing they just help people live longer. Forget about the diabetes, forget about the obesity, forget about, whatever. they're helping people live longer. And so this news story, I think, is massive. It shows that GLP-1s are actually linked to dramatically lower colon cancer mortality. So if you know or love anybody who's ever struggled with colon cancer, ever fought and battled colon cancer, listen to this data because this is astounding. This is from UC of San Diego. It was a study that showed that that followed more than 6,800 colon cancer patients. Y'all with me? 6,800 patients with colon cancer. GLP-1 users had 15.5% mortality at 5 years versus 37.1% mortality for non-GLP-1 users. So the folks 5 years out from having colon cancer that were on a GLP-1 had a 15.5% mortality rate, and the people who didn't get it had a 37.1% mortality rate. That's massive. That's massive. Over twice as better outcomes for patients on GLP-1. Now, listen to this. Even after controlling for BMI, the severity of the disease, and age, and other sort of confounding health factors, GLP-1 users still had significantly higher survival rates. My mind is blown every day by the news that comes out about these drugs, and they're getting cheaper. Like, is that clocking? Is that clocking with you? These drugs are showing that people live longer, and they're getting cheaper. Like, when do we have positive news like that? When do we have anything positive that's going on in the broader discussion of health, of politics, of life in general, where we can go, we're getting a deluge of information about something that helps people live longer. Every day we're getting more information, and they're getting cheaper. My mind's blown. I guess it's the eternal optimist in me. It just doesn't happen, and it's happening now. And what an amazing time to be at the forefront of this, right? What an amazing time to be a member of the OTP community. So the strongest benefit appeared to be in people with a BMI over 35. That's, pretty severe obesity, but it's also a super stigmatized group of people in cancer care, right? Because you go to the doctor with a sore throat, and what does he tell you? You need to lose some weight. Now, extrapolate that out to cancers when people go, if you would just eaten less and moved more, probably wouldn't be in this situation. It's a highly stigmatized group, and they receive the strongest benefit in terms of outcomes with colon cancer if they were on a GLP-1. So researchers are pointing to some of the anti-inflammatory properties and metabolic effects of these drugs. But as we know, one of the things we know about cancer is it eats sugar. It eats sugar. That's why on those PET scans, PET CT scans, is it, that they use to kind of see if you've got cancer tumors, because they light up because they're eating a bunch of glucose, right? And essentially, we know that cancer cells eat glucose, and these drugs help to regulate the amount of glucose in your blood. And so some of the metabolic effects, the anti-inflammatory properties, and as well as early lab data showing that GLP drugs may slow tumor growth, may all be contributing factors. And the researchers, of course, of this clinical trial are saying we have got to step up studies and clinical trials that test whether GLP-1 medications can improve all cancer survival rates. Wow. I mean, my mind is blown. My mind is just continuing to be blown every day at what these medications are doing for sick people. And that's why I get so fired up about the accessibility to these medications, because it's helping people live longer, better. They're getting their lives back. And that's why so many people, so many people are like, you got to be on that shot for life. It's like, yeah, I am, because it's helping me live longer, right? I mean, from my cold dead hands. I mean, that's really the rallying cry of this community in terms of whether they're going to allow something to take these medications away from them. So these medications are changing lives. They've changed my life, along with lifestyle modifications and things that I've changed. They're one of the greatest contributing factors to the current state of my health. which is about as good as it's been in 10 years, my weight particularly. But one of the other huge contributing factors to my current state of health is my partnership with this company called Shape'a. Shape'a has a numberless scale, and the numberless scale has been a massive game changer for me. Bear with me here, because when I explain this to people, like, why would you have a scale without numbers? Well, first of all, for me, when I step on the scale and it's up 5 pounds on an intellectual level, I know I didn't gain 5 pounds of fat last night, but on an emotional level, it destroys me. And I won't step on that scale again for a week, 2 weeks, a month, 3 months, sometimes 4 or 5 months. I won't step back on the scale. But the reality of the ritual of stepping on the scale is it causes me to be more engaged on a day-to-day basis with my health. If I stepped on the scale in the morning, I'm more cognizant of what I eat, when I eat, how much I move, when I move, if I move. All of that stuff matters more to me if I stepped on the scale in the morning. But if I step on a number scale, I can't do it. It messes with my emotions too much. The numberless scale zooms out, gives you 10 days of data. 10 days of data instead of just this day-to-day fluctuation, and it allows me to stay engaged with the scale. And when I'm engaged with the scale, I'm engaged with my health. I think it could do the same for some of you if you're screwed up here like I am with the numbered scale. You can learn more about it by going to home.myshapeit.com/OTP. Code OTP30 is going to save you 30%. It's one of the greatest tools that I have found on this journey, and I hope that you can find it and discover it for yourself. That's what we got for the podcast today. I'm super thankful for each and every one of you for being here today. Really would encourage you to hit the thumbs up button. I will take, if you have any questions, now is a great time to drop them in the comments while I'm wrapping up the discussion here. But I just want to take a moment to say a 5-star rating and review on the podcast helps this podcast reach so many more people. We're in the top 1% globally. So take all the podcasts in all the world. OnThePen is in the top 1% of those podcasts. And each week you're helping us to be in the top 50, sometimes even the top 20 of all medical podcasts in the US. Like, there's some big names on that top 20 list, like Peter Attia, Dr. Paul Saladino, so many big names. You put us oftentimes in the top 20 of that list. And so I want to thank each and every one of you for helping us get there, because as we train the algorithm that this content is helpful, there are 30 to 40 million people over the next 5 years that may get access to this drug that didn't have it before. And they're going to need some place to turn when it's time to talk about side effects, when it's time to talk about accessibility, when it's time to talk about all of these things. We hope that OnThePen can be one of those places for those people to turn, as it has been for you. And if it has been helpful for you, please just share it, hit all the buttons, do all the things. I really, really, really thank each and every one of you for being the best part of what we do at OnThePen. I couldn't, wouldn't, and shouldn't do it without you. Until next time, we'll see you on the next one.
Howdy, partner. Next time you get chicken at McDonald's, you won't have to choose between the creamy flavors of ranch and the tangy kick of buffalo any longer. This time, enjoy all the flavors you love all at once. Try new creamy and tangy buffalo ranch sauce at participating McDonald's for a limited time.
Here for the Lowe's early Black Friday deals? You're right on time for some of our biggest savings. We're talking up to 50% off select major appliances, plus up to an extra 25% off when you bundle select major appliances. Holiday lights going up soon? Select ladders are up to 50% off right now. Get Black Friday prices without the Black Friday crowds. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 11/19. Selection varies by location. Select locations only. While supplies last. See Lowe's.com for more details.